Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Energy Newsbeat podcast. My name's Stuart Turley, President and CEO of the Sandstone Group. We are recording this podcast on the right before President Trump's inauguration. President Trump is stepping into a landmine left by the Biden administration, and that landmine has got several key pieces of information that President Trump does not have yet, but he has got an all-star cast lined up going through the Senate hearings. And I mean Chris Wright, we've got Doug Burgum, and we've got Lee Zeldin that are going to be covering in the energy space some critical points. And I've got one of the United States leading industry experts who is really, in my opinion, one of the key players in the natural gas area. I've got my dear friend Steve Reese on the podcast today. How are you today, Steve?
I'm doing great. And first of all, a big thank you to all my friends and followers that have prayed for my health. I'm doing fantastic and headed towards a kidney transplant by a wonderful donor. And so I'm excited and looking forward to continuing to get healthy. And our business is just thriving, and anxious to talk here with my old buddy from the wrong college.
You know what's really cool, Steve, is prayer works, and without God, I would not be here. So
I'm just saying. My transplant doctor looked at my chart and he goes, "You haven't dodged any bullets." He goes, "You've been dodging cannonballs." And I said, "Well, that's just the Lord keeping me alive." So anyway, let's get after it, my friend.
I'll tell you what, I cannot wait to see you at NAPE. We're going to have a NAPE booth. We have, I think, 6 booths over there, and I'm already getting podcasts lined up. Last NAPE, I think we did 35 podcasts. I thoroughly enjoyed our podcast with you. We had Doomberg even there. People were lined up to see the green chicken, but he was via remote. But Chris Wright showed up on the podcast shortly after that with Doomberg, and Chris Wright even came up to say hi to you at NAPE.
Yeah, great pick. Trump knows what he's doing with these cabinet picks. I'm excited for Chris and Doug and those guys to take the ball and run with it now that we've intercepted the ball and we're running it back for a touchdown.
If you don't dislike your government enough, it is amazing the landmines that the President Trump is going to have to maneuver through. And I mean, his cabinet picks are the strongest I have ever seen for any one single administration.
Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully, if we were talking earlier, that I'll get a chance to be on a panel with Chris and those guys at some point in the next year, and look forward to engaging them like we did Senator Cruz last summer in Dallas.
Oh, I'll tell you, and that was a fantastic event with the Americans for Prosperity, and I'm interviewing again Genevieve Collins from the Americans for Prosperity, and I would love to get Senator Cruz, them, and Chris Wright on a panel to talk about the energy issues and the landmines that have been left for them. They're not very pretty. And I mean, you take a look at the money that has been mismanaged and spent, an additional $2 trillion to the $7 trillion that the Biden administration has added. That's not, I went to OSU and you teased me about that. We can barely count, but I can count. I can count to $9 trillion that the Biden administration's is handing Trump. That is not only a recession, that's like a depression waiting to happen unless he can navigate his way through this.
Yeah, absolutely.
And energy is at the forefront. Germany went totally green energy. They have gone through deindustrialization, geopolitical problems, and that's a whole nother can of worms over there. We cannot ship enough LNG over there because it cannot replace cheap Russian natural gas. Let's say cheap Russian natural gas is $1. LNG over there is $20. You can't be industrial at that price difference of energy. So but I want to know what your thoughts are on the natural gas front because drill baby drill is one thing, but all the oil and gas companies are now drill baby drill when it's fiscally responsible because they're responding to giving back money to their shareholders. What are you seeing on the forefront with all of that mix going on?
Let me start with your comments about specifically Germany. As you know, we have a firm called American Gas Partners. That is a firm we founded 7 days after Ukraine was invaded. And so we've been working on this for 2 years. It will be a majority, we thought initially, a majority German-owned LNG infrastructure firm.
Wow.
We will be the only end-to-end solution. We're going to take title in the Gulf, and we're going to own all our own liquefaction capacity, transport, and regasification capacity all the way to the end users. We've met with over
Wow.
75 German CEOs. 100% have said they want U.S. shale LNG supply. We met with BASF. We went with the tire manufacturers, the glass manufacturers, Benz, you name it. We've been in front of them. So we have signed. So what we're seeing now is we have one of my partners, good friends, and we've had an office in Berlin now for about a year and a half. One of my partner's best friends will be the next chancellor of Germany. Will be involved in writing their energy policy. As you know, Germany and a lot of Europe is turning to the right. We've had discussions with the head of the EU, and now we have a meeting with the president of Poland next week. So we've signed our first two offtake deals for Germany and Poland, and we're on board to sign two more this month. So that on the supply side, the reason that it may work versus cheap Russian natural gas is they don't trust Russia. And
Right.
you know, the gas business, this is my 44th year. The one thing I have learned is price isn't always necessarily the top component of the mix. Deliverability and security of supply, a lot of times, no pun intended, trumps even price.
I'll take the pun.
Because of what's happened, in the past. So we're excited about that. And yes, we've had discussions with Toby Rice. We may be moving some of his gas under those contracts.
Nice.
We have had two discussions with Harold Hamm and discussions with Expand, the former Chesapeake and Southwestern. So we're going to try to have the heavy hitters on this side and also direct to all the end users over there, really due to my partner's relationships in Western Europe.
This is a phenomenal update. Steve, this is fantastic.
It really is. We're excited. And, of course, my team will be involved on the supply side over here. And we're working already with Toby's guys on moving some of his gas under our first contracts. And we're hoping to be up and running and actually moving molecules by 2027. As you can imagine, these are long deals, and we're involved. We were going to usurp Biden regardless, in that we're going to use floating LNG liquefaction facilities of Delphins. And so we're involved with Delphin in one of the boats being built in South Korea right now. So we're really excited on that front. And I think irregardless of who's in office over here, we're seeing the Europeans say, we want secure, U.S. natural gas supply for our power, because it's almost devastated the German economy.
The floating liquefaction and gasification facilities are amazing.
Yeah.
And why this kind of discussion needs to get to Chris Wright and President Trump, because like we were talking about Hawaii, why is Hawaii our heaven on earth using 60% of their electrical generation is from fuel oil, which is the worst kind of, pollutant out there. It's worse than coal. Wouldn't it make sense, like Vietnam just dropped in a degasification to electrical plant? It's straight from LNG to the plant, and off it goes.
It's insane. We are working on a plan to bring quite a few German CEOs and business leaders over to meet with Toby and tour his fields. And we're working
Nice.
on with either the president and or Chris and some of those guys. We really want to get in front of Chris. And
Right.
here's another reason. The German government and the EU now are both telling us they're possibly interested in providing the credit for us to buy this gas. And really, I think our government should be looking at that as well. Because
Well,
it's a lot of gas. It takes a lot of credit to be able to buy those kind of supplies.
oh, absolutely. But when you sit back and take a look at the despicable Biden administration, because we know Biden's not capable of making a decision past his next ice cream cone. It was the administration that put the LNG ban out there, and we still look to be doubling within the next 5 years our LNG.
Yeah, there's a thing called momentum and a thing
Capability.
called thing, and
That
a lot of
man should
times,
be shot.
yeah, a lot of times, push comes to shove, the market will take care of itself, regardless of what the bad actors try to do. And so now we've kind of got our team, chosen, and we're moving down the field. Like I said, we've intercepted the ball, and we're going to try to run it back for a touchdown. And I think the ones in the energy business are excited. It's interesting because as much as they had their foot on our neck for 4 years, we're still at record production.
In spite of them having their foot. I mean, in spite of having it
Yeah,
on there, holy
exactly.
smokes, Batman. If now I gotta hand it to, ESG did do the a good thing for the oil and gas and over the last 10 years in the fact and through the governance aspect of it. I applaud the oil and gas, big oil and gas, as well as many, 50% of our oil and gas is made by private companies. And all the oil guys that I work with, big and small, large and small caps and privately held, they are giving money back to their shareholders. I think
Yeah.
governance and the ESG was a good thing. And I think that just unrelenting and unwise spending is a thing of the past.
Yeah, I went through a couple of private equity deals myself, and I saw a lot of times where there was a lot of stupid money out there. And
Right.
actually, on the reverse side, I had a couple of clients where their PE backers, when prices went down a little a few years ago, they panicked and sold too quick. And now I think there's a lot more intelligence behind rates of return and capital expenditures. And one
Right.
thing we talk about, drill, baby, drill, we forget about all the ducks. We forget about all the uncompleted wells sitting out there. And I haven't looked at the numbers recently, but there are probably thousands of uncompleted wells that aren't going to take a drill bit to finish.
Right. Yeah. Well, I just took a look at the ducks as well too, and on the ducks, they have used a lot of them because they're a lot cheaper to go after as far as a thing. And I think that I noticed that there were thousands that they had used last year from the EPA reporting and
Good.
everything else. I'll go take a look at those numbers.
Good, good. What we're also seeing too is we're seeing some interest back into some legacy basins here in Oklahoma, up the Uinta. A lot of the tier one Permian acreage, has been drilled up. Now
Right.
those wells are still phenomenal and doing great. But on the gas side, of course, we still do a lot of business with Reese Energy Consulting in the Haynesville and in the Marcellus. And there's
Nice.
still some very prolific wells being drilled over there. And I know people like EQT and Expand and Comstock, and a lot of those guys have done a great job.
Nick Deulius, I can't, he is a super guy. I believe it's CNX.
Yeah, I'd like to meet him. I have hopefully he'll be at NAPE. We have our targets on him. I think there's couple of ways we could help them and also the guys at Diversified. So I got to get my rope out and try to corral those chickens here.
I'm going to put I'm going to see about sending you and him a note. Nick, I put him up there with you and Toby as great leaders, just like Chris Wright leading Liberty Energy is absolutely, there's a different kind of caliber, and you and he would absolutely hit it off wonderfully.
That's awesome. That's awesome. One thing that has changed with respect to the gas business and that we're heavily involved in is the AI data center development.
Right.
And we're being approached now, working on our first contract to help those guys both with physical gas connections and with commercial supply negotiations and handling their product, their gas supply. And they've gone up and realized nuclear is great, but it takes a long time to implement. Wind and solar are kind of, obviously, we know the issues there. And natural gas is one that is obviously, we believe is, of course, cleaner and ubiquitous and readily abundant. And so we're starting to get some interest. We've had about 3 or 4 firms reach out in the last quarter, just knock on our door and say, we're going to be looking at doing this.
How
We'd
fun.
like your help. So that's pretty exciting. And those are large assets. Those are large footprints that they're putting in.
On my Substack, I just put out a note and taking a look at ERCOT. ERCOT's demand is expected to double in the next 5 years. The only way that ERCOT can meet demand is not with renewable, not with nuclear, not with coal because they can't get it approved, and it's natural
Yeah,
gas.
yeah,
And the
absolutely.
amount of natural gas can come on quick enough. And I looked at their pipeline and I kind of did a crayon math again, OSU versus OU. You know what you're doing. Me, I have to use crayons. We don't know how to read. And so I was sitting there and I did the math and the budget for new power plants coming on. I have to hand it to the Texas ERCOT for having the roadmap there for the first 2 years is there. And so now that they're in session now, this is a great conversation to have with Chris Wright and to have with Ted Cruz and all that because the United States is not like Texas. They're not going to ramp up in the way that Texas has in looking at natural gas. The only way that we can put in a natural gas plant now is if it is dual fueled approved
Right.
hydrogen and natural gas. What are the odds, Steve, that we're going to have enough hydrogen ready for a power plant?
There's two major issues with hydrogen. One is the cost of production, and the other is trying to use the same transportation assets as natural gas because of the molecules are detrimental and really a safety hazard to steel pipe. And so I think it's a nice buzzword and I think it's nice signaling. And I think there obviously are some applications for it, but it's got a long, long ways to go. And
Oh yeah.
yeah,
It's
the natural gas side, interesting. We've been also approached. There's some guys that looks like I'll be on their board and will help with a lot of their business development. A company that is now taking flared gas from refineries and turning it into LNG.
no way.
And so
I love that.
yeah, we do too. So we were, I'm negotiating a contract with them to either probably be an advisor and our team also help them with marketing their product and also helping them sign up. We've got 5 or 6 refineries within a couple hundred miles of you and I. And so I
Oh
mean, there's a
yeah.
lot of exciting things like this now that all tend to tie in together.
Well, I think what we're going to do, Steve, is when we're at NAPE, let's do a recording for another update on this. And I'm going to reach out to Chris and a few of the other folks as well. This will be out by then. And let's follow up because I think there's so much going on. I'd like to have a regular once a month with Steve Reese on the podcast.
That's great. And I'd love to be, if we could do a podcast at NAPE with Chris and Jay or whoever,
You bet.
together. But I think there's some things we could let Chris know of some ideas between both the domestic side and the things we're doing at American Gas Partners. Because
Oh, how fun.
yeah, we're
I,
going to have, I mean, we feel pretty confident that both Harold and Toby are going to be, right there next to us marching down the road. And that would be really
oh,
exciting.
and I know that Harold Hamm called President Trump to endorse Chris Wright. And I know that Chris is the best man for our Department of Energy that's in the United States.
Yeah,
So,
I think he's very succinct. He's very humble. and laid back. I don't think he's the kind that gets his feathers ruffled. I think he kind of puts one foot in front of the other and keeps trucking. And
Well,
so we're excited
well,
about
Steve,
that.
you've got three components to your thing. We were running out of time here, but you've got Reese Consulting, you've got Reese Training, and then you've got your LNG partnership going on there. How do people get a hold of you, Steve?
Feel free to just find me on LinkedIn. We've got a lot of followers, or go to reeseenergyconsulting.com or reeseenergytraining.com. Our training courses, will have 4 of those videoed and online by the end of Q1. We've been doing some training for E&I in Italy. We're getting
Wow.
ready to possibly look at merging with another large training firm, and we're working to try to look at getting those. We're working with Texas A&M University. They want to use a couple of my gas courses as accreditation courses for both faculty and students. So
Nice.
we're excited. We really need that now, and we'd love to start talking to people in Chris's shop at the DOE for training as well.
Okay.
I appreciate you having me on, and
That sounds
I look
great.
forward to seeing you here in a couple of weeks.
Sounds great, Steve. Thanks.